Well, hi there folks, welcome back to Rich Reviews. So the latest of films that didn't get a wide release in theaters, didn't make much money, or found their way onto the internet. The latest of these is a documentary called Three Identical Strangers, and this has made so far over $3 million in several hundred theaters, and this is being buzzed as one of the more stranger documentaries in recent years. So this is about the true story of three brothers who happened to meet by chance, of all things, who were separated at birth. And while you think it's going to be this wonderful, great story about, oh, triplets reunited, no, this story goes dark very quickly. So Bobby Safran, who goes to community college, and everyone who greets him at community college is like, hooray, nice to see you again. And some girls kiss him, and it's like, and he's thinking to himself, hooray. And one person calls him Eddie, even though he's not Eddie. And then when he finally goes to see his roommate, he's white as a ghost, and he says, and he thinks this guy is Eddie. He asks him a series of questions, and he slowly starts to come into his mind that, oh yes, I have a twin, because they were from the same Jewish adoption agency, born on the same day. And obviously they go down to meet Eddie, who, and they get stopped by the cops, and basically when the cop asks them why they're going so fast, basically they say, oh, I found my lost brother, and the policeman is like, yeah, right, I'll give you a ticket, now get out of here. Bobby meets Eddie, and it's like one of the more mind-boggling experiences that they two have had. And this story sort of gets picked up in the local paper, and then eventually gets picked up by even more papers, and then they come to discover, oh yes, there's actually a third brother. That guy's name has to be David. And now all these three people, of course, they go on a national media tour of some sort. They go on Donnie by Tom Brokaw. I guess they get into a film, apparently. They eventually do find their mom, which, hey look, it's like, what's there to say? Hey look, she was essentially a prom night girl, got knocked up, had triplets, never really recovered after having given birth to them. Now, of course, while we all think, okay, wow, what a wonderful, happy story this all is, this story gets dark and dark pretty quickly. Now, considering the fact that, oh yes, all three brothers are reunited, the parents are actually angry by the fact that, yes, they are never told that there were triplets around. They just think to themselves, okay, yes, we had one kid. And of course, they go to the adoption agency, and how the parents were asking questions of like, okay, why didn't you tell us they were triplets? How long did you separate them for? And apparently, the answers from the adoption agency were, yes, we knew they were triplets. We didn't tell you because, quite frankly, we didn't think anyone would want to take triplets. And of course, one of the fathers basically said, yeah, I would have probably taken them, all three of them. And the fact that they separated them at 6 months, which tells you how, hey, look, they're bonded right from the get-go here. Of course, there are reenactments here. And so I guess one of the fathers, apparently it's raining. As they leave the adoption agency, while it's raining, one father goes to go back to get his umbrella, and out of the corner of his eye, he sees that the fact that these adoption agency officials are actually celebrating. It's like they're celebrating because they dodged a bullet here. Now this is when the film really gets weird, disturbing, and occasionally this will probably outrage you depending on how you feel about it. An investigative journalist starts to uncover the mystery of these three twins, and they come to discover they were part of an experiment of a nature versus nurture study, and how each triplet was placed in an upper class, middle class, and blue-collar family. A guy by the name of Peter Neubauer, who was an Austrian Holocaust refugee, came to New York, was obsessed with Freud, and figured to himself, I'm going to do a nurture versus nature study by getting people who already had psychological issues, and I'll follow their kids to see how they were raised and see how they were doing. Now this film interviews two participants of that study, one of whom is an 80-year-old, I don't know how old this woman is, but she's a peripheral figure who basically says, well, hey look, the doc wanted to do this, and the fact that yes, during the 60s was the real birth of psychology and psychiatric movement. The director here also interviews another person who was involved with the study for 10 months, and he's like, well, yeah, I can understand why now people will be outraged by this. And yes, it was a great deal to resist the fact that, yes, I'm going to these kids, and it's really a great urge to resist the fact that to say, yes, you have a twin, or I saw someone like you the other day. Asked by the director here how many more participants of the study were here. He's on the record as saying there are 4 more participants of this study, so quite frankly, someone could be walking down the street one day and run into their twin and not realize, oh, I have a twin here, and no one ever told me about it. Apparently, the investigative journalist did sort of knew about it towards the end of his life. I guess the study was never published, amazingly enough. It was finally put to rest in the 80s because, frankly, they figured themselves they've been caught red-handed, or at least they'll try to escape without no one noticing. Now, of course, this study apparently has never been published and is apparently sealed in the archives room at Yale. And apparently the adoption agency closed years ago, so they don't have the study with them. But apparently, a powerful Jewish lobbyist group does own the rights to this study. And apparently now the study is going to be released in 2066. So apparently, when I'm an elderly old man, will this study be released? Although, I guess at the end of the film, they give you coda or after thing is by saying that as a result of the film, about 10,000 pages of this thing has been released, although a lot of it is heavily redacted, and the fact that, yes, well, it doesn't come to any conclusions about the study, which you come to think to yourself, oh, wow, this must be one heavily induced thing, because we're also introduced to another pair of twins that are interviewed, and how by the fact that they say our mom, who gave us up for adoption, was highly intelligent, but also had, psychological issues, including schizophrenia. They came later in their lives, they didn't grow up with one another, and yes, they all spent time in psychiatric treatment facilities, and it quite frankly ends up sad for one of the triplets because only 2 are interviewed here. Now, again, depending on how your point of view is, you're thinking to yourself, this study is a monster of a study that should never have been done in the first place. I actually come to think of this study as like, who would want to do this study in the first place? Clearly someone with an interest in Freud might want to do this. So what I'm going to say here, folks, is that Three Identical Strangers is really a fascinating film that if you're a psychology major or you're interested in Freud or interested in all the psychological aspects of things from the 50s and 60s that should never be released, I'm going to give this a leave work early because quite frankly, you're prepared to be outraged at sometimes, folks. So, folks, Three Identical Strangers, have you seen this? What did you think? Please put everything in the comment box below. As always, folks, like, comment, subscribe, enrich yourself with knowledge. I'll see you next time, folks. Yes, hooray.